Yas Delaney and welcome back to my channel. This week, I'm going to be testing out and reviewing Apple's new streaming app, Apple Music Classical. So if you don't know, the conversation around classical music's place in the streaming era has been going on for quite some time now, with dedicated classical music streaming apps like Adagio and Primephonic launching within the past decade. Both apps advertised a unique listening experience dedicated to classical music lovers, with optimized search features, extensive metadata, impeccable audio quality, and exclusive content. They also adopted a different compensation model than the major streaming services, calculating an artist's revenue based on the amount of time that a track was played by the second versus the amount of total streams it has overall. Perhaps the most significant issue that a separate app for classical music streaming is meant to solve is that of metadata, which is the underlying information that identifies important details about the music, like titles or personnel involved. For popular music, album title, featured artists, and track titles are usually fine, but classical music tends to have a lot more moving parts. A single track could have a composer, an ensemble or two, a soloist or multiple, and a conductor. And all those people need to be credited for their contributions. So the artist slot can get a little crowded. And there are also works with multiple movements and a million recordings of the same piece when you're looking for just that specific one. So as you can see, there is some room for improvement in the classical music streaming experience. However, not everyone in the classical music community thinks that this is an issue worth tackling. In fact, some have expressed that it enforces a divide between classical and popular musics, making classical music seem less accessible. Popular playlists like Spotify's Intense Studying and Peaceful Piano have made classical music more discoverable to listeners that might not normally seek it out, and has led to some classical artists having major success on major streaming platforms. Since pianist Paul Lewis's 2007 recording of the first movement from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata was placed on a popular Spotify playlist, it's amassed over 140 million streams, which is way more than the average for classical music. So I am a classically trained musician. I do listen to classical music, although not as much as I used to. I don't play nearly as much as I used to, so I feel like not being immersed in the genre has sort of cut out my usual method of classical music discovery, which was sort of just hearing stuff around. So discovering new music is definitely going to be a priority for me when I'm testing out that. The interesting thing about this experiment is that I don't usually listen to classical music on streaming, and I don't think that the reasons this app was created are really why that is. It's really just because I developed a particular liking to a certain recording that's not available on streaming. And although Apple Music Classical touts the largest classical music catalog with over 5 million tracks, I find it kind of hard to believe that they'll have things like random recordings from music festivals and footage of people's college recitals. And sometimes those are just the recordings that I prefer. There are also just some pieces that haven't been professionally recorded, but you can find on YouTube. But that isn't to say that I never listen to classical music on streaming, because if I can find a YouTube recording that I like on streaming, then I do try to add it to my library. And I've been an Apple Music user since late 2021, so although they don't have a complete picture of my classical music listening habits, I feel like they have enough to make some educated recommendations to me, so I'm excited to see how accurate they're going to be. But when I thought about how they might go about curating recommendations for me, I thought, there's no reason why they couldn't use my listening habits from other genres to suggest classical music for me, right? I mean, I listen to plenty of other music on Apple Music, and I think that gives insight into my musical tastes. If you saw my last video, then you know that I have a classical music podcast called Classically Black, and a couple years ago, we created a mini-series called Put Me On, which is where we talk to people who were not classical musicians and did not listen to classical music. We asked them about the types of music that they do listen to, and then we gave them classical music recommendations based on those artists. And I would love it if I opened Apple Music Classical and could see the influence of the music that I listen to from other genres and the recommendations that they give me. Now, to be honest, I doubt that will be the case, but hey, I mean, maybe they'll surprise me. So I have been very, very deliberately avoiding looking at anything related to the app, looking at other people's opinions or what it looks like and what its capabilities are. And I've also never used any classical music streaming app before. So I could have like the purest reaction for YouTube. So without further ado, let's get into that. Okay. All right. Listen. A guide to Apple Music Classical. Okay, so this seems very. Oh, this is like a. No, I'm not listening to that right now. Not on camera. So just off the top of my head, or like looking at all of this, I don't necessarily see anything that jumps out of like, that's me. That's exactly the type of stuff that I like. But I think that they're putting a lot of the like most popular things at the top because this literally just came out a couple days ago. And it doesn't look like anything on this page is necessarily like catered to me personally. Yeah. So far, I'm interested to see this composer's undiscovered. What Brahms pieces do they feel are undiscovered? I mean, Lieder. I don't know how much people play his Lieder. Okay. Instrument playlist. Hold on, let's see. Okay, I'm a bass player, so let's see what they have on here. The Elephant. Okay. I mean, I like the Elephant for sure. Young Person's Guide. Cello Suites. Kodai. Savitsky, Chazon Triste. Okay. Interesting. This is cute. This is cute. I can have like a double bass playlist. Why is Beethoven 5 on here? Now see, because what does that got to do with me? Like, what does that have to do with me as a bass player that it doesn't have to do with other people? Don Juan. Okay, it's getting a little. It's getting a little irrelevant towards the bottom, but I still think that's cute. I think that's really cute. And let's see what instruments. Okay, so that all the orchestral instruments. Let's see, like, how is there any instrument? Viola da gamba. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like some outside stuff. That's not really outside to me, but like I wanted to know like how, like, I've played a viola da gamba before. Now I don't play the viola da gamba, but like I have played one. And that's because I fully thought they might just like stop at the, you know, at the orchestral like instruments. I would like to see a couple more, but if we're just like doing a one-off, a viola da gamba is a interesting choice. And now this is cool. You can do by like instrumentation, like, okay, but these are playlists. Can I let's search something. What else? Okay, so you can search by, let's see, opus number. Let's do an easy one. Let's do Mozart. Oh, there's I'm picking random number 23. Okay, you can search by opus number. Let's see what genres. Yeah. Orchestral, chamber, vocal, stage works. There's operas. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Let's see, experimental classical. Let's see what they. Okay. Like. Okay. Lots of white guys. Let's see if I can. Key. I didn't know if this was gonna be true. You can search by key. That's kind of cool. Don't know why you'd want to do that, but it's cool. That's cool. So far the instrument thing and the key thing are like, I'm like, okay. Now over the week I'm going to be trying out like, different things and just seeing, just exploring basically. What I'm most interested in knowing right now is how well it knows me. Okay, has my recently played. Okay. So it knows, I was gonna say, I wonder how it's gonna sync up with my just regular Apple Music. So it has some things I've recently listened to. I recently listened to Rachmaninoff's Symphonic Dances. I listened to a lot of stuff from Randall Gooseby's album. Um, let's see. Oh, I have some classical Christmas music on my own playlist. When was I ever listening to The Crown? Y'all made that up. Some Julius Eastman. Okay, so it knows what I like. I want to see if I can find like, that you have like your personal radio station on Apple Music or Spotify. Like, that's what I want to see right now. Like, late night classical. Okay, period. Um, the story. I'm into this. I love me a little narrative situation. I want to see what that's about. And I also, Apple Music, I'm pretty sure every streaming app at this point has a lot of like extra things, like sometimes like a radio show or like, something like that. I don't know. Or like they have music videos, but I want to know like how built in that type of stuff is. I was at this. No, these are people that play instruments. Never mind. You know what I'm not sure about? And maybe this is me just being weird, but individual movements, like I know that they link to, like, if you click on it, you can go to, can you? Okay, interesting. When I clicked on that, I was expecting it to take me to that full sonata. Um, yeah, but I, okay, I don't mean to be weird because I do sometimes I listen to standalone movements all the time. When I'm listening to like a playlist though, I'm wondering, I guess I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be cohesive. It's an essentials playlist. It's just things that are important. So maybe I'm just being ridiculous about that. Let's see. But yeah, let's back to this. This is interesting. Popular recordings. It'll give you multiple recordings of the same piece. Okay, so in the beginning of the video when I talked about Paul Lewis and his situation, getting that placement on a playlist, I'm like, I wonder how they picked um, his recording of Moonlight Sonata. Like, did he just get lucky, or like what? And so this is making me wonder about that, because on this playlist of Beethoven Essentials, they have Lisa Willerstein. Sorry if I'm butchering her last name. Her recording, and then when you click on the actual piece, one, I can't get to any of the. Not I can't, but like the other, like the full piece is not really accessible, it seems, except for I guess in this situation, like I can click on other recordings, the popular recordings, but like her recording, the one I just theoretically listened to on the playlist, is not on here. It's not the editor's choice, which is like, I'm curious about that, because why didn't they put the editor's choice on the playlist? Why was it the editor's choice? Yeah, I'm curious about that. Why wasn't the editor's choice on the playlist? And then, why isn't her recording at least one of the most accessible ones on here? Like, how far do I have to scroll to even get to it? Because I feel like theoretically, if I'd never heard this sonata before, I'm still scrolling. If I had never heard this sonata before, okay, here it is. Oh, okay, it took a while. Theoretically, if I had just heard that piece for the first time, and I want to listen to the rest of it, because that's the first movement that they have on this, right? Yeah, the first movement. especially to me, especially as somebody like who listens to classical music, it's important to me that I hear her play the rest of it. Like, I want to hear her recording. I just heard the first movement. I want to hear her do the second and third. Track by track. I like this. They have audio commentary of the artist guiding you through their music. I'm into that. I like that. They also have exclusive albums. Exclusivity, to be honest, is not something that I'm like particularly wooed by. Like, I don't care. So when I was looking at the genres, okay, periods and genres, interesting, because when I was looking at it before, where was I? Here. I feel like I wasn't getting all of this nuance, all the nuance that I'm getting here with like Baroque, symphonic, minimalism, Renaissance, new classical, avant-garde, like art song. Wow, art song. Of course, Erlkönig is first. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of cool. I'm into it. I'm into it so far. And to be honest, I would never pay for a classical music streaming service. Like, I knew that PrimePhonic existed before Apple bought them, which is something I was supposed to say in the beginning of this video. Apple bought PrimePhonic. They did. And that's where Apple Music Classical came from. So I forgot to say that, but oh well. Yeah, I would never buy a classical music streaming app. I just don't listen to classical music enough to justify that. And I'm also just not not really pressed. Like, the way I was listening to classical music on YouTube and stuff like that was fine to me. But this is already built in with my Apple Music subscription, so I mean, I'm gonna see about it. Okay, one more thing that I want to do before I wrap it up just for today and continue throughout the week, like spending time with the app. I want to see what they're trying to suggest to me. Like, I don't feel like anything was really like curated for me. So I'm gonna go on my regular Apple Music app and see in the radio mixes or whatever that they have and see if I can get a classical themed one. Just a nice spice. Okay. Let's see. On my so this is my radio station. I doubt it's gonna play anything classical. Okay. My regular radio station, so they're playing Outkast and Zep. See, I knew that they were not gonna play me anything classical. I'm not getting anything. Okay, well, I was kind of hoping to find something a little bit more curated tonight, but you know, maybe I was gonna say maybe over the course of this week they'll find some stuff, but since I'm gonna be listening to new things, that's not really gonna be based off of what I like anyway, but that's okay. There's still a lot to look at in the app, so I will check in with y'all once I have something else to say. Okay, so checking in after a couple days of using Apple Music Classical. I've, first of all, am looking busted. What else is new? I'm at home. Doesn't matter. I've used a couple of their playlists now. I tried the classical commute playlist. I did a couple of the essentials playlists. So I did symphonic essentials and chamber music essentials, which in hindsight, for my goal of like finding new music, was not a good idea. Like, I don't know why I would listen to a symphonic essentials playlist, because of course I was getting like Beethoven 5, 1 Top 40, like essentials. So yeah, I mean, so those playlists were fine. I also did the Viola da Gamba playlist because, I mean, it was cool. They had some cool, like, they have some kind of funny, cool playlists. Like, they have a Child Prodigies one, which is not something I would have thought of. So that's kind of funny, as like composers and artists who are child prodigies and like that's totally a phenomenon in classical music. And yeah, that was just like a fun thing to learn. One thing that was surprising to me was that they don't have like an angry playlist. Like I I had a bad day and I was just like kind of pissed and I was like, I'm supposed to be using Apple Music Classical. Let me find like some pieces that are like, I don't know. I'm mad right now. And I couldn't find one. Like I checked on their music by mood playlist like category. Um and there was nothing like that. I mean, the closest thing that I got was like when I moved on from the like music by mood playlist and I went to like more playlists, they had one called like Dark Sides and they had one called Monsters, which I was like, okay, I mean like mood wise it's pretty close to what I'm looking for. But most of it was like about like the supernatural and stuff like that. And I even went to their Heroes and Legends playlist because I thought it would be, like bombastic and loud and whatever, like have some of the similar themes. But I just feel like anger is a pretty basic emotion when you're creating collections of music by mood, that like it's one that you would have. Like you happy, sad, angry. Like it's just one of the standard ones. Um, Now I will say, like I listened to the Dark Sides and the Monsters playlist. I mean, it didn't really hit the spot for me in that moment. The closest thing that I found was that they had one called Storms, and I won't say a lot, but some of the music on that playlist was actually quite literally about weather, um, which is fine. I think for the purpose of like the type of music I was listening for or looking for rather, it did like it was it, it was okay. Like it did its job. Um, but again, kind of weird that they didn't have just like I don't know, some type of angry playlist that was like very straightforwardly that. And one of the other playlists that I tried was their Classical Music for Love playlist, which was largely fine, but there was something that was a little weird about that playlist to me. So one of the pieces that was on it was Deep River, which, if you don't know, is a Negro spiritual. Um, and I thought that was very strange. I don't know. You guys can tell me, like, when you hear these playlists, does it matter to you how far the music is from the actual theme of the playlist? Like, or does it depend? Because I feel like for me, it depends. Like, for example, the angry playlist that I was looking for and didn't find, I found, I thought it was a little weird that they didn't have it, but like, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, the Storms playlist ended up being pretty comparable to what I was looking for. And I don't necessarily know that I was really looking for pieces that the composer specifically wrote about anger. Like that was the purpose of them. When it comes to like a romance playlist, like, and you have a Negro spiritual that's like very much not about that. And maybe it's because like I am familiar with Deep River. I'm sure like if nobody knows that that's what it is. Like, but it also very much sounds like a Negro spiritual. Like it does. But it's about like crossing over the Jordan, like, and then part of it is about like going home to heaven, and like, what does that have to do with you kissing on your man? Like, I don't. It was just like weird to me. Like, these are people talking about escaping bondage, and like, I'm not like upset about it because again, I know that like some people are just like cutting the playlist on for the mood. Like, again, I also don't think that Deep River gives romance. Um, I think it very much gives Negro spiritual. But yeah, that was just kind of like weird to me that it was on there. Like I don't know whose choice that was thematically. I think it was a weird curation choice, to be honest. But as of right now, that's the only weird choice that I found. Um, but yeah, I'm enjoying kind of working my way through the playlist. They have some pretty fun ones that I'm like interested to go through. So I'm gonna spend a little bit more time and check back in later. Okay, so another update. I'm in the car and there's just some stuff I want to talk about real quick. One, I usually listen to music with noise canceling headphones on. So this is not normally a problem for me. But sometimes I listen to music just out loud because sometimes I wear headphones too much. And I cannot hear the bass. Um, in like a lot of the recordings, and like I said, I'm a bass player, so like I like stuff to be bass heavy. Obviously, like for stuff like this, it's just like most stuff is not going to be unless it's meant to be. But for this, it's like I feel like I'm searching for it. So that's kind of taken away from the experience for me. Um, but that's only when I listen to it that one way. Also, the app is missing some of the like normal features like that are in the regular Apple Music app. Like queuing songs, being able to put like play this song next or play last. You can usually swipe and then it'll come up on the left side of the screen to cue a song to come up next. Being able to and just having a queue and being able to move songs around in the queue is something you can do in the regular Apple Music app that I can't do in Apple Music Classical. Also a listening history. Oh my gosh. Like I can't like I don't understand why that's not there. Like so sometimes I've been like I said, I've been looking around on the playlist and stuff. So I'll be listening to a playlist while I'm driving and I'm not on my phone, and then like I get to my destination, I'm like, oh, what's that piece I just heard like 3 pieces ago? Obviously if you're on a playlist, that is going to be a little easy because like you can like go back and like listen because the playlist is the playlist. But like I feel like it should just have the history there. It has it on everything else. And then also like features, which I actually think would be kind of cool. And that kind of varies. I don't know if that is like an app thing or if that's like on the artist side, because I've seen a lot of like just pieces of music in general, not just classical music, that have lyrics in another language that they don't have the lyrics in the app. Some for English language songs too, but I feel like it's more often that I see it for songs that are not in English. But then I also see sometimes when there are songs that have some lyrics in English and some lyrics in another language that the lyrics are there. And sometimes I like to sing in German, so I would love the lyrics. But the queuing features is really like the number one thing that I'm like, I use them so much because I add so many things to my library. Just like, oh, I like a song on that album. I'm gonna add the whole album. And then like so there's a lot of stuff in my library I don't listen to or like I just haven't gotten to. So I really use the queuing features a lot in Apple Music. And would love to use them in Apple Music Classical if I could. And another reason why is because I haven't really built out a library in Apple Music Classical. So if I don't want to listen to a playlist and I just want to like have my own stuff, but I want it to be in a certain order, sometimes like if I'm in the regular Apple Music app, I'll queue up like 6, 7 songs or whatever at a time, and I can't do that. It's like I have to interact with the app on Apple Music Classical every time I want to hear something in particular. And speaking of building a library, that's really one of the reasons why I'm making this in the car in general. It's because like I've just found that it's not great for driving. Um, like I said, I haven't built a library up, and you can like save certain recordings that you like. And I need to explore that feature some more. But like I don't know why, but like Beethoven 1 just like really got in my head. I was like, I want to hear Beethoven 1. And I usually listen to it on YouTube. And I couldn't remember which orchestra plays the recording that I listened to on YouTube. Also, it was nighttime, like it's the evening. I want to go home. And I turned on a recording of Beethoven 1 in the app. And I was like, oh, it's far too fast. Far too fast. And the next one I was like, it's a touch slow. And so like I was sitting in the parking garage like listening to recording after recording after recording. And obviously that's something that'll get better with time. Like I said, I'll find recordings that I like and I'll add them to my recording, but like to my recording library. But I was just like, it was kind of like it got to the point where it's an itch that you need to scratch. So I was like, I felt like I can't pull out of the drive of the parking garage until I find a recording that is just right, which I did eventually. So, okay, so I just got the opportunity to see Chevalier, and after the movie, I was like really in the mood to listen to some of his music, Chevalier de Saint Georges' music, and I was thinking it would be cool if in the Apple Music Classical app, like they had, like, I don't know, like a spread for him or something like that, because when you open the regular Apple Music app, if a like large pop artist has just released a single or an album or something, it's going to be on the front page, on the home page of the app. And the movie doesn't come out for a couple weeks at this point. Actually, by the time this video is out, it'll probably be out. As of right now, there's nothing there, and I feel like, you know, it would also be a good idea to like push that, because a lot of his music was destroyed after the French Revolution. So for what we do have, it would be kind of cool to highlight that. So we'll see. Maybe once the movie comes out, they'll do like some promo, like promoting his music. I'm sure the studio has been keeping an eye on the fact that Apple Music Classical just launched. So yeah, I just thought that would be cool. We'll see. This is Delaney from the future at the editing desk. I was scrolling on Twitter as I normally am when I am editing, and I saw a promoted Apple Music Classical ad, or I don't think the ad was from Apple Music Classical, but it was promoting Apple Music Classical and Chevalier together. But what I didn't think of, and this makes total sense, was that it was promoting the soundtrack to Chevalier, because of course that is what's going to actually profit the movie. And while they might get indirect profits from seeing Chevalier's music, like the actual Chevalier, his music being streamed, probably not, because people who listen to his music might want to see the movie, but the movie is probably what's gonna drive new people to his music in the first place. So it makes more sense for them to promote the soundtrack, which is what they'd actually get paid for. So I still think it would be cool to see his music promoted, but the way they're doing it makes sense. This video has been taking forever for me to finish, so I'm gonna give my final thoughts right now. So one of the main things that has stood out is how educational the app is. The extensive metadata is doing its job as promised, with helping with the organization, but the educational component really sticks out in this series that they have called The Story of Classical. It's a 9-part series that is both music and commentary intertwined, that sort of lays the groundwork for what classical music is. In a lot of ways, it's very similar to the playlist that they have, except for it's interspersed with commentary, and each part is about an hour long. And it really takes the listener on a journey of discovery in classical music. It explains things like what a sonata is and what a concerto is, and it also is built around major musical eras in classical music. Now, I didn't listen to all of the series. Like I said, it's 9 parts. Each part is about an hour. So no. But you can see all of the music that is featured in each series. And I did listen to some of the first, quite a bit of the first one. But one of the things that stood out to me was that unfortunately there is not very much diversity in the selections that they chose to tell the story of classical. I think you get to part maybe 3 or 4 before you see a woman, and then like maybe like 6 or 7 before there's anybody that is not white. So I'm trying to figure out how to say this. No, fuck that. I don't think that, you know, the canon is something that needs to be reinforced by this series. Like, I feel like I understand that they have that sort of essentials appeal that they're trying to go for with like their essentials playlist, like the symphonic essentials and like all that type of stuff. There are certain pieces of music that I expect to see on those playlists, and I'm not surprised to see on those playlists. But when you're talking about the story of classical, this is literally a historical narrative that they're drawing, and I think a lot of the app is marketed around this educational component of bringing people in and making classical music accessible and making it an experience, and the fact that you can build this sort of narrative around the story of classical music and how it came to be, because it literally goes in chronological order, and you're building it in a way that reinforces basically everything that we've been having conversations about for the last couple years about diversity in classical music. I didn't enjoy that. It was quite disappointing, not very surprising, but I felt like the app in itself was supposed to be quite innovative, and while I know some of the people that were involved in the creation of the app, but I don't think I know anybody who was a curator on this app. And it would make total sense to me that they would go to like leading scholars and things like that. But when you're talking about leading scholars in classical music, I think that is it's very easy to fall into that canonical perspective. And something that this historical approach got me thinking about is how classical music is treated in comparison to other genres of music. So I started this channel because I was in college studying classical music at an academic level, and I genuinely did not know that the type of study that I was doing in music history and music theory was something that could be done for other types of music. It just never occurred to me. When I was a freshman in college, I didn't know what musicology was. I didn't know what ethnomusicology was. And I didn't know that there were scholars that focused on music that was not classical. And I mean, coming from where I come from, could you really even blame me? Because I was applying to a lot of music schools, a lot of conservatories specifically, and there was no representation of other genres of music. There was nowhere that people were studying other types of music, with the exception of jazz and some very, fairly new programs in like music tech or music production, things like that, at select schools. And even so, that's not academia. So I started this channel because I was like, well, if I can study the type of music that I grew up on and that I have a connection to, beyond the connection that I have to classical music, then I would love to do that. And when I was looking at how extensive this story of classical series was, I was wondering, like, where is that for other types of music? I know that on the Apple Music app, there are, radio shows and things like that where you're talking to artists, and there's some commentary, maybe some behind the scenes stuff. And I think, some of it might have to do with just what is marketable to different types of audiences. Different audiences for different genres of music want different things. But also I feel like, you can't miss what you've never had. And I just wonder, especially now in the age where like we're seeing so many great like documentaries, and we are so much more connected to artists and to our favorite things in general. Like there's so much more transparency, I would say, because everything is documented now, and has been for quite a while now. What it would look like if there was something that comprehensive for another genre of music on Apple Music is what I mean. because I get why they made another app. I do. I get that there are just like literal technical things about the Apple Music app that don't lend itself, or not just Apple Music, but streaming in general, that don't lend itself to classical music. I get that. But I think it's also kind of fair to say that in order to entice people to get another app, you might need some extra bells and whistles. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing that this exists for classical music and not other types of music. I think it can go either way. There are quote unquote legitimate or like reasons that I could see marketing wise or business wise why they would create something like this for classical music and not other genres. But I always wonder, because it just seems like classical music is treated as something that deserves to be studied and documented in a way that other genres are not. And I just wonder if it might reinforce one of the concerns I brought up at the beginning of this video that some people had about, you know, having a separate app for classical music. You know, that it might reinforce the perception of inaccessibility, similar to just what some media about classical music does. Even though you don't need to be musically literate to listen to or enjoy classical music, I think that sort of the way knowledge about the music is packaged gives more like history class than like enthusiast in some ways. And speaking of other genres of music, I had a couple of thoughts about what is considered classical music. Because first of all, there are some things from my music library that are missing in my library on the Apple Music Classical app, which is supposed to automatically carry over all of the classical music you have in your library. Some of those things are very, very straightforwardly classical music, so I don't know why they're missing. Things like Yo-Yo Ma, one of his Bach albums, some Mozart I think is missing, you know, so there's not really, it's not really a genre thing. Like, I don't know why that stuff is not there. I think there's some Tchaikovsky that might be missing, like, I don't know. But I'm also thinking about how they'll move forward with categorizing what ought to be on there. Because, so one of the things that carried over was my Sweeney Todd soundtrack from the movie Sweeney Todd, the Tim Burton movie. I get it. It's orchestral. It's a film score. But when I think about, you know, some of the things that, some of the music that we hear in film, that is not necessarily straightforwardly classical, but is orchestral, I wonder how that's going to sort of play out in the long run on the app. Because I also have other music that is purely orchestral. For example, Barry White's Love Unlimited Orchestra, that's in my library. And maybe if I'm in an orchestra mood, maybe I want to hear that on Apple Music Classical. I don't know. It's not a huge deal, but it's just a deal that I thought about. Also, jazz. So in my preparation for this video, I was looking at some articles that were written about Primephonic and Adagio and just this general gap in the market of classical music streaming. And only one of them mentioned jazz as sort of an add-on that, you know, might have some of the some similar issues to classical music. I'm not a big listener of jazz. I listen to a bit of jazz, and not super widely, I would say. But I asked Twitter because I was like, you know, maybe somebody will know. And basically, I think, you know, there are some things that are similar to classical that, like, of course, jazz standards would kind of be similar to what Apple Music Classical classifies as works. And then you go to a work and then you can search the recordings of said work. And I think that you know, that would be useful for jazz, but I think that they've also progressed in a way that is similar enough to popular music that the functionality of standard streaming apps works well enough for that. If you are a big jazz listener and you have thoughts on that, like, please let me know if this is something that you would like to see, you know, sort of incorporated, if you would like to see jazz on that app. Because that was another thing, like, I have a friend that released an album that's like contemporary classical, but like was unsure like how to classify it genre wise on streaming, and decided to classify it as jazz. And so their album is not on my in my library on Apple Music Classical. And similarly, their previous album, which in the Apple Music app is under instrumental, is not on Apple Music Classical. And now I just realized another friend of mine who I think classified her album under new age. So that's just, I wonder, like, I can definitely see them taking like whatever you classify your album as and then just like automatically sorting it into the Apple Music Classical app. That makes sense. But I wonder if it would be more effective if they let you do that genre thing and then they just ask you straight up, do you want to put your album on Apple Music Classical? I don't see very many people abusing that, just because the two apps share a library anyway. So like, I guess if you want to force your R&B album on Apple Music Classical, like, okay, but like, I don't see that being a problem. And I think it would leave room for people who are a little more genre fluid, but fall into a classical music space to be more at home on both apps. And yeah, I feel like overall the app was not as curated as I would have liked, but that was kind of just like a testy thing I was gonna do, like, to have some fun. It's fine. Like I said, I would not really get a dedicated app for classical music. Like, if I had to pay for it, I already have Apple Music, so it's free to me. But I think that there were some cool things in there, and if you're someone that wants to explore classical music more, I think you'd like it. I think it's pretty cool. And I would also say I've gotten a lot better at remembering that it exists over time. Like, you know, sometimes when you have like, when you're trying to incorporate another app into your daily life, like for example, when I got like a Washington Post subscription after having like, I only had like New York Times for a long time. Like, I need to cancel that. I don't read the Washington Post. Like, I'm trying to. It is not because I don't like their coverage, it's because I just keep forgetting that I have the app and that I pay for it. I have paid for it. And I feel like it was similar with Apple Music Classical. Like, I had to remember, okay, I'm listening to something classical now, I'm gonna change over to that app because it's just optimized for that. But anyway, that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching this video and for being patient as I put more videos out. Here are my social media handles. You can also subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon so you can get a notification every time I get off my butt and post a video. Thanks again, and I will see y'all later.